Most people lose their power not because they are weak, but because they move when they should remain still. When emotions rise, they react. When pressure hits, they panic. When silence would win, they speak. This audiobook is about mastering the rarest discipline on earth, the discipline of stillness under fire. Not passive stillness, not fear-based silence, controlled stillness. The kind that keeps your authority intact, your mind clear, and your position unshakable when everything around you demands a reaction.
Reaction is the fastest way to lose control. Not because you're wrong, not because you're weak, but because reaction hands the steering wheel to someone else. You feel it before you think it. A spike in the chest, heat in the face, the urge to respond, to explain, to defend, to correct. And right there, that moment, you have a choice. Most people never see it. They react automatically. They let emotion decide timing, tone, and direction. And the moment they react, they are no longer ruling the situation. You have a choice. React or rule. That's the key. Reaction is not action. Reaction is surrender dressed up as strength. It feels powerful because it's fast, but speed without control is chaos. Whoever reacts first loses. Read that again, slowly. Let it settle. Whoever reacts first loses. Because the person who provokes you is no longer guessing, they're guiding you. They've pulled a lever and you moved. That's not power, that's predictability. And predictable people are easy to control. Leaders don't rush. They don't scramble to respond. They don't allow the moment to drag them by the collar. They slow the moment down. History is full of examples. Generals who paused while others charged. Negotiators who stayed silent while the other side talked themselves into a weaker position. Executives who didn't respond to disrespect, then responded with results. Stillness isn't passivity. Stillness is restraint under pressure. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to think. You don't need their permission to stay silent. That's the first discipline. Most people believe reacting proves confidence. It doesn't. It proves dependency. Dependency on validation. Dependency on being understood. Dependency on being right now. It's not about confidence. It's about control. And control begins with delay. You have a choice every single time. Someone criticizes you. You pause. Someone disrespects you. You pause. Someone challenges you publicly. You pause. That pause is not weakness. That pause is you reclaiming the timeline. Whoever controls the timeline controls the outcome. That's the key. The world trains you to be fast. Fast replies, fast opinions, fast outrage, fast defenses. But power operates on a different clock. Power waits. Power observes. Power chooses when to move. You don't need to react to prove anything. You don't need to explain yourself to protect your worth. You don't need to answer immediately to stay relevant. You don't need their permission. Reaction is emotional debt. You pay interest on it later, in regret, damaged relationships, lost leverage. Stillness compounds. Think about the last time you reacted, not acted, reacted. What did it cost you? A conversation you wish you could rewind, a message you shouldn't have sent, an argument that escalated instead of ending. That wasn't bad luck. That was speed without discipline. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it with me. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Emotions are inevitable. Reactions are optional. That's the difference between people who lead their lives and people who are dragged through them. Leaders feel anger and don't move. Leaders feel pressure and don't rush. Leaders feel insult and don't bite. They let others reveal themselves. Whoever reacts first loses. When you stay still, something interesting happens. The other person keeps going. They talk more, they show their hand, they overextend, and you gain information. Information is leverage. Stillness gives you leverage. This is where most people get uncomfortable, because stillness feels like doing nothing, and doing nothing feels risky. But reacting is riskier. Reaction locks you into a position before you've seen the whole field. Stillness keeps your options open. You have a choice, always. And that choice is the foundation of everything else in this audiobook. Here's what you do, starting today. First, delay your response by default. Not forever, just long enough to regain control. Seconds, minutes, sometimes hours. You don't owe anyone immediacy. That's the key. Second, lower your emotional volume before you decide anything. No decisions when your heart rate is high. No messages when your jaw is tight. No responses when your body is in fight mode. Calm first, decision second. Third, ask one silent question. Does reacting strengthen my position or weaken it? If it weakens it, you don't move. Simple, not easy, but simple. This is how ruling begins, not with dominance, with restraint. You stop handing control to people who provoke you. You stop letting moments hijack you. You stop bleeding power through unnecessary reactions. And slowly, quietly, your presence changes. People feel it. They test you less. They rush you less. They respect the pause. Because stillness creates gravity. Whoever reacts first loses. Whoever stays still decides. That's the law. Master this, and everything else becomes easier. Your words carry more weight. Your decisions land harder. Your silence speaks louder than your explanations ever did. You don't need their permission. You don't need to prove anything. You have a choice. And once you choose stillness, you're no longer reacting to life. You're ruling it. You've learned how to slow the moment. Now it's time to understand what happens when you say nothing at all.
Speed feels strong. Stillness is stronger. Most damage in life does not come from bad intentions. It comes from fast emotions. A message sent too quickly. A reaction delivered too loudly. A decision made while the body is flooded with adrenaline. Careers collapse in seconds. Reputations burn in moments. Relationships end over words that never needed to be spoken. Not because people are evil, but because they were fast. You have a choice. That's the key. Emotional speed feels like control. It feels decisive. It feels bold. But it's an illusion. Fast emotions don't make you powerful. They make you exposed. Because when you move fast emotionally, you move without leverage. You move without perspective. You move without options. Power is not fast. Power is precise. High-status individuals understand this instinctively. They slow down when chaos speeds up. They lower their voice when others raise theirs. They wait while others rush. That contrast is not accidental. It's disciplined. Speed feels strong. Stillness is stronger. Look at who panics first in any crisis: the inexperienced, the insecure, the emotionally untrained. They talk more, they explain more, they justify more, and every word costs them position. It's not about intelligence, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about intelligence, it's about discipline. Emotional speed is the enemy because it bypasses choice. It hijacks you. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing shortens, your body decides before your mind has a vote, and once the body leads, the mind follows poorly. You have a choice, but only if you slow down enough to see it. That's the key. Think about the last argument you escalated. Not the one you won,
the one you regret. What started it? A fast reply, a sharp tone, a need to correct immediately. Speed. And once speed enters the room, power leaves. Because fast emotions demand immediate relief. They want release. They want expression. But power delays relief for long-term control. High-status individuals are not emotionless. They feel everything. They just don't obey every feeling. They don't confuse emotion with instruction. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their permission to breathe. You don't need their permission to delay a response. That belief that you must respond now is the trap. It's not about urgency. It's about discipline. Speed feels strong. Stillness is stronger. Fast people are easy to read, easy to provoke, easy to manipulate. Slow people are unpredictable, and unpredictability creates authority. When you slow down emotionally, 3 things happen. First, your perception widens. You see tone, timing, intention. You notice what's actually being tested, not just what's being said. Second, your options multiply. You're no longer trapped in reaction. You can choose silence, humor, redirection, or delay. Third, your presence changes. Others feel it. They adjust. That's power. You have a choice, but choice requires space, and space only exists when you slow down. Here's what emotional speed looks like in real life. You receive criticism and respond immediately. You hear disrespect and snap back. You feel misunderstood and over-explain. Every time you do that, you teach people something dangerous, that they can control your pace. That's the key. When someone can control your pace, they control you. So what do? You train slowness. Not laziness, not avoidance, slowness. First discipline, create a delay rule. No emotionally charged response within the first few minutes, sometimes longer. Messages can wait, conversations can pause. Your dignity is not on a timer. Second discipline, lower physiological speed before mental speed. Slow breathing, relax the jaw, drop the shoulders. Calm the body first, because a fast body creates a fast mouth. Third discipline, replace reaction with observation. Instead of responding, notice, what are they really pushing? Why now? What do they want from this exchange? That observation puts you back in control. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about managing it. Say it again, it's not about suppressing emotion, it's about managing it. Most people confuse restraint with repression. They are not the same. Repression hides emotion, restraint commands it, and command is power. Speed feels strong, stillness is stronger. Think of the most powerful person you've ever been in a room with. They didn't rush. They didn't fill silence. They didn't react to every comment. They moved slowly because they could afford to. That's what you're building, the ability to afford stillness. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to be composed. You don't need their permission to protect your position. Fast emotions cost you authority. Slow responses build it. Every time you choose stillness over speed, you train dominance. Not dominance over others, dominance over yourself. That's the foundation. And this discipline compounds. People stop testing you as much. They stop rushing you. They stop expecting instant access to your emotions because you've changed the rules. You have a choice, always. Speed is the habit of the anxious. Stillness is the habit of the powerful. Speed feels strong. Stillness is stronger. Master this chapter and you'll notice something important. Your silence begins to speak, and that silence does something uncomfortable to others. It applies pressure.
Silence makes others uncomfortable. That's the advantage. Most people are afraid of silence. They rush to fill it. They talk to relieve tension. They explain to regain control, and in doing so, they give it away. Silence is not empty. Silence is loaded. It creates pressure, and pressure reveals truth. You have a choice. That's the key. You can rush to speak and relieve your discomfort, or you can stay silent and let their discomfort work for you. Most people misunderstand silence. They think it means they're losing. They think it means they're being ignored. They think it makes them look weak. That belief keeps them powerless. Silence is not weakness. Silence is leverage. Negotiators know this. Interrogators know this. Experienced leaders know this. They ask a question, and then they stop. They don't rescue the moment. They don't soften the space. They wait. And the other person talks. They justify. They over-explain. They contradict themselves. They reveal priorities, fears, and limits. Not because they are stupid, but because silence creates pressure. Silence makes others uncomfortable. That's the advantage. You don't need their permission to be silent. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to let a moment breathe. Silence feels risky only to those who need approval. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. When you speak too quickly, you relieve pressure. When you stay silent, pressure builds, and pressure shifts power. Think about any difficult conversation you've had. The moment you felt tension, what did you do? You talked, you filled the gap, you explained your intention, you softened your stance. Why? Because silence made you uncomfortable. You have a choice. That's the key. Either you manage discomfort or discomfort manages you. High-status individuals are comfortable with silence. They don't rush to be liked. They don't chase understanding. They let silence do the work. Because silence forces clarity. When you stop talking, the other person has to confront their own thoughts, and most people can't handle that. So they talk. They give you information you never asked for. They expose leverage they didn't mean to show. Silence is not passive. It's active restraint. And restraint is power. Silence makes others uncomfortable. That's the advantage. Here's where most people fail. They use silence emotionally, not strategically. They go silent out of fear, out of resentment, out of withdrawal. That's not power. That's avoidance. Strategic silence is calm, intentional, grounded. It's silence without tension in the body. That's the difference. It's not about not speaking. It's about when and why you speak. You have a choice. Silence is a tool. Like any tool, it must be used with control. Here's how you train it. First discipline. Stop filling gaps automatically. When a conversation pauses, don't rush. Breathe. Hold eye contact. Let the moment stretch. It will feel uncomfortable. That's normal. That discomfort is where power is forged. Second discipline. Speak last when possible. Not always, but often. The last words carry the most weight because they frame the meaning of everything before them. Third discipline. Use silence after statements, not just questions. Say what needs to be said, then stop. Don't justify, don't defend. Let it land. You don't need their permission to stop talking. That's the key. Most people sabotage themselves after strong statements. They add explanations. They dilute impact. They talk themselves out of authority. Silence makes others uncomfortable. That's the advantage. Most people are afraid of silence. They rush to fill it. They talk to relieve tension. They explain to regain control. And in doing so, they give it away. Silence is not empty. Silence is loaded. It creates pressure, and pressure reveals truth. You have a choice. That's the key. You can rush to speak and relieve your discomfort, Or you can stay silent and let their discomfort work for you. Most people misunderstand silence. They think it means they're losing. They think it means they're being ignored. They think it makes them look weak. That belief keeps them powerless. Silence is not weakness. Silence is leverage. Negotiators know this. Interrogators know this. Experienced leaders know this. They ask a question, and then they stop. They don't rescue the moment. They don't soften the space. They wait. And the other person talks. They justify. They over-explain. They contradict themselves. They reveal priorities, fears, and limits. Not because they are stupid, but because silence creates pressure. Silence makes others uncomfortable. That's the advantage. You don't need their permission to be silent. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to let a moment breathe. Silence feels risky only to those who need approval. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. When you speak too quickly, you relieve pressure. When you stay silent, pressure builds, and pressure shifts power. Think about any difficult conversation you've had. The moment you felt tension, what did you do? You talked, you filled the gap, you explained your intention, you softened your stance. Why? Because silence made you uncomfortable. You have a choice. That's the key. Either you manage discomfort or discomfort manages you. High-status individuals are comfortable with silence. They don't rush to be liked. They don't chase understanding. They let silence do the work. Because silence forces clarity. When you stop talking, the other person has to confront their own thoughts, and most people can't handle that. So they talk. They give you information you never asked for. They expose leverage they didn't mean to show. Silence is not passive. It's active restraint, and restraint is power. Silence makes others uncomfortable. That's the advantage. Here's where most people fail. They use silence emotionally, not strategically. They go silent out of fear, out of resentment, out of withdrawal. That's not power. That's avoidance. Strategic silence is calm, intentional, grounded. It's silence without tension in the body. That's the difference. It's not about not speaking. It's about when and why you speak. You have a choice. Silence is a tool. Like any tool, it must be used with control. Here's how you train it. First discipline. Stop filling gaps automatically. When a conversation pauses, don't rush. Breathe. Hold eye contact. Let the moment stretch. It will feel uncomfortable. That's normal. That discomfort is where power is forged. Second discipline. Speak last when possible. Not always, but often. The last words carry the most weight because they frame the meaning of everything before them. Third discipline. Use silence after statements, not just questions. Say what needs to be said, then stop. Don't justify, don't defend. Let it land. You don't need their permission to stop talking. That's the key. Most people sabotage themselves after strong statements. They add explanations. They dilute impact. They talk themselves out of authority. Silence protects strength. Say it again. Silence protects strength. Silence also exposes manipulation. When someone is trying to rush you, sell you, pressure you, corner you, silence disrupts their script. They expect engagement. They expect response. When you don't give it, they lose momentum. And momentum is their power source. Silence cuts it off. Silence makes others uncomfortable. That's the advantage. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak deliberately. You choose words like tools, not reflexes. You don't react to fill space. You respond to create outcomes. It's not about being quiet. It's about being intentional. Say it clearly. It's not about being quiet. It's about being intentional. Here's a hard truth. People who talk the most usually control the least. They negotiate against themselves. They explain away their own boundaries. They reveal insecurity through noise. Silence hides nothing, but it reveals everything in others. That's why it's feared. You have a choice. You can keep proving your worth with words, or you can let your restraint speak for you. High-status presence is quiet. Not weak, not timid, quiet. Something when you start practicing this, people start talking more around you. They start checking themselves. They become cautious because your silence feels like evaluation, and evaluation is authority. This is how stillness becomes pressure. You slow your reactions. You slow your emotions. Now you slow your words, and the room shifts. You don't need their permission to use silence. You don't need their permission to hold the line. You don't need their permission to stay composed. Silence is not weakness. It is pressure. Master this, and you'll stop bleeding power through unnecessary words. You've learned to slow down. You've learned to stay silent.
Calm the body. Command the mind. Most people try to control their thoughts first. They fail. Then they blame themselves. They tell themselves to stay calm, to think positive, to be rational, and nothing changes. Because emotional control is not psychological first, it is biological first. That's the key. Your nervous system decides before your mind explains. Your body reacts before your thoughts catch up. Heart rate spikes, breathing shortens, muscles tighten, vision narrows. And in that state, you are not choosing, you are reacting. You have a choice, but only if your body is calm enough to access it. Calm the body, command the mind. This is where unshakable people separate themselves. They don't start with thoughts, they start with physiology. Because a regulated body produces a clear mind. An unregulated body produces panic dressed up as logic. It's not about mindset, it's about regulation. Say it clearly. It's not about mindset, it's about regulation. Most emotional mistakes are made in a flooded nervous system. Anger, defensiveness, urgency. And once flooded, you will say the wrong thing with confidence. That's dangerous. High-status individuals understand this instinctively. They don't fight emotion at the thought level. They slow the body. Calm the body. Command the mind. You don't need their permission to breathe. You don't need their permission to ground yourself. You don't need their permission to regulate. You have a choice, but choice disappears when your nervous system is hijacked. Here's the truth most people ignore. You can't think your way out of a physiological reaction. You have to regulate your way out first. That's the key. Think of the last time you felt overwhelmed. Were you breathing fast or slow? Were your shoulders tight or relaxed? Was your jaw clenched? Your body already told the story, and your mind followed. So let's get practical. Stillness begins in the body. First discipline, breath control. When pressure hits, slow the exhale, not the inhale, the exhale. Longer exhales tell the nervous system we are safe. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Do that 3 times. You'll feel it. Your heart rate drops, your vision widens, your thoughts slow. Calm the body, command the mind. Second discipline, posture. An unstable posture creates an unstable mind. Straighten your spine, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw. This is not cosmetic, this is neurological. Your posture sends signals upward. Weak posture tells the brain to prepare for threat. Strong posture tells it to stand down. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. Third discipline, muscle release. Most people carry tension without realizing it. Fists clenched, neck tight, stomach locked. That tension keeps the nervous system in fight mode. Release it deliberately. Hands open, jaw loose, tongue relaxed. Small actions, massive impact. You have a choice. You can stay tense and reactive, or you can regulate and respond. That's the key. Here's where most people get confused. They think calm means passive. It doesn't. Calm is readiness without panic. The most dangerous individuals are calm under pressure, not because they don't care, but because they're not overwhelmed. Stillness is not softness. Stillness is control. Calm the body, command the mind. You'll notice something once you start training this. Situations that used to trigger you feel slower. Insults feel weaker. Pressure feels manageable. Not because the world changed, but because your nervous system did. You don't need their permission to be composed. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to protect your internal state. This is the foundation of emotional authority. Without it, every technique fails. Silence fails. Delay fails. Strategy collapses. Because an unregulated body will always sabotage discipline. It's not about willpower. It's about biology. Say it again. It's not about willpower. It's about biology. Here's a simple rule. If your body is fast, your decisions will be sloppy. If your body is calm, your decisions will be clean. That's the law. High-pressure professions train this relentlessly. Pilots, surgeons, special forces. Not motivation, regulation. They don't rely on emotion. They rely on systems. You're building a system, one that keeps you grounded when others spiral. Calm the body, command the mind. Practice this daily, not just in crisis. Train calm when things are easy, so it's available when things are hard. Because in the moment, you won't rise to intention, you'll fall to training. That's the key. You have a choice, but only if your nervous system gives you access to it. This chapter is about installing that access. You've learned to slow reactions. You've learned to use silence. Now you've learned to regulate the body.
They want movement. You give nothing. Provocation is not accidental. It is intentional. People provoke to control your emotional state, to pull you off center, to speed you up, to make you react. Because the moment you react, they gain leverage. You have a choice. That's the key. You can see provocation for what it is, or you can fall for it. Most people fall for it. They think provocation is about disrespect. It's not. They think it's about disagreement. It's not. Provocation is about control. If someone can make you angry, defensive, or rushed, they are temporarily driving your behavior. That's power, borrowed from you. They want movement. You give nothing. High-status individuals understand this early. They don't ask, why did they say that? They ask, what reaction are they trying to get? That question changes everything. Because once you see the intention, the bait loses its power. It's not about the insult, it's about the discipline. Say it clearly, it's not about the insult, it's about the discipline. Provocation comes in many forms: mockery, sarcasm, passive aggression, public challenges, disrespect disguised as humor. Different masks, same goal: movement. They want you to explain. They want you to defend. They want you to snap back. Because any emotional movement is information, and information is leverage. You have a choice. You don't need their permission to stay still. You don't need their permission to ignore bait. You don't need their permission to refuse the game. That's the key. Here's a hard truth. The louder the bait, the more valuable your restraint becomes. Weak provocation doesn't matter. Strong provocation is a test. And tests only work if you participate. Most people think strength is responding harder, responding sharper, responding faster. That's not strength. That's predictability. Real strength is refusing the invitation. They want movement. You give nothing. Think about it. If someone insults a calm person and gets no reaction, who looks foolish? Not the calm one. The provocateur is exposed. Provocation without reaction collapses. That's why silence frustrates manipulators. That's why calm unsettles bullies. That's why restraint irritates insecure people, because they lose control of the exchange. You have a choice. But choice requires awareness. So, let's break this down practically. First, recognize provocation early. The moment something feels emotionally charged, ask what reaction would benefit them right now. Anger? Defensiveness? Embarrassment? Once you identify it, you disarm it. That's the key. Second, detach meaning from the bait. Provocation only works if you assign meaning to it. You disrespected me. They crossed the line. They're challenging my authority. Maybe, maybe not. But reacting to protect ego is always expensive. It's not about ego. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about ego. It's about discipline. Third, choose non-movement deliberately. Not passive silence, not withdrawal. Stillness. Neutral face, calm posture, minimal response, or none at all. This is not avoidance. This is dominance, because you're refusing to be led. They want movement. You give nothing. Here's what happens when you do this consistently. People test you less. They poke less. They escalate less. Because provocations without payoff are abandoned. No reward, no game. You don't need their permission to disengage. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their permission to protect your internal state. That belief that you must respond to disrespect is conditioning, not truth. High-status individuals don't defend their status emotionally. They let behavior speak. They don't react to noise. They move only when it benefits them. That's the key. Provocation is loud by design. It wants attention. It wants urgency. Your restraint starves it. And restraint is a skill. You train it the same way you trained silence and slowness. Pause, breathe, observe, then decide. You have a choice, always. Here's another truth most people miss. Provocation often reveals insecurity. People provoke when they feel threatened, ignored, or powerless. They want to feel significant by controlling your emotions. When you refuse to react, you deny them that significance, and that's why it works. They want movement. You give nothing. This doesn't mean you never address issues. It means you address them on your timeline, with your tone, from your position, not theirs. Delayed response is still response. Calm response is still authority. But reactive response is surrender. It's not about winning the moment. It's about winning position. Say it clearly. It's not about winning the moment. It's about winning position. Provocation tries to pull you into short-term thinking, into ego defense, into emotional exchange. Discipline keeps you long-term, strategic, unmoved. And that's how power compounds. You'll notice something as you master this. Your presence changes. You become harder to manipulate, harder to rush, harder to read. Not because you're closed, but because you're controlled. You don't need their permission to be unmoved. You don't need their permission to stay grounded. You don't need their permission to choose stillness. They want movement. You give nothing. This chapter completes an important layer. You've learned to slow reactions. You've learned to regulate your body. You've seen provocation for what it is. Now comes the next discipline.
Pause now. Decide later. Time is the great neutralizer of emotion, of manipulation, of bad decisions. Most people don't lose power because they choose wrong. They lose power because they choose too fast. They respond while emotions are hot.
They decide while pressure is loud. They commit while clarity is absent. And once a decision is made publicly, it's expensive to reverse. You have a choice. That's the key. You can decide now, or you can pause and decide later. Delayed response is not avoidance, it's authority. In a world addicted to immediacy, the person who waits stands out. Because delay signals confidence. When you rush, you signal fear. Fear of losing, fear of being misunderstood, fear of missing out. When you delay, you signal strength. You signal that you are not controlled by urgency. You don't need their permission to wait. You don't need their permission to think. You don't need their permission to protect your position. Pause now. Decide later. Time neutralizes emotional manipulation. Think about manipulation itself. What does it rely on? Pressure, urgency, emotion. Answer now. Decide now. React now. Why? Because manipulation collapses when time expands. The moment you slow the timeline, emotion loses its grip. That's the key. When you delay, 3 things happen. First, your emotions settle. What felt critical often feels manageable an hour later. What felt offensive feels irrelevant the next day. Second, information surfaces. People reveal more, situations evolve, details emerge. Third, your leverage increases. You're no longer reacting, you're choosing. You have a choice. Delayed responses are misunderstood by the impatient. They think it's weakness. They think it's indecision. They're wrong. High-status individuals delay because they can afford to. They don't chase closure. They don't rush clarity. They let the moment come to them. And that patience unsettles people. Pause now. Decide later. Think about negotiations. The person who answers first usually gives more. The person who waits forces the other side to move. Silence plus time equals leverage. It's not about hesitation, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about hesitation, it's about discipline. Delayed response also protects reputation. Many careers end not because of incompetence, but because of one fast email, one emotional message, one rushed statement. Delay would have saved them. You don't need their permission to delay a reply. You don't need their permission to log off. You don't need their permission to say, "I'll get back to you." That phrase alone is power. I'll get back to you. Simple, neutral, unemotional. It buys time, and time buys clarity. You have a choice. Here's where people struggle. They fear what delay looks like. What if they think I'm weak? What if they think I'm unsure? What if I lose the moment? That fear is conditioning. Power doesn't rush to prove itself. Power waits and lets others expose themselves. That's the key. Delayed response also filters impulse. Not every thought deserves expression. Not every emotion deserves action. Delay creates a gap between impulse and behavior. And that gap is where mastery lives. Pause now, decide later. Here's how you train this discipline. First, install a default pause. No immediate replies to emotional triggers. None. Messages, comments, confrontations. You pause by default. Second, name the urgency out loud to yourself. This feels urgent because I'm emotional, not because it actually is. That awareness breaks the spell. Third, decide from a regulated state only. If your body is tense, you don't decide. If your breathing is shallow, you wait. Calm first, decision second. That's the key. Delayed response does something else most people miss. It reverses power dynamics. The person who pushes for speed is usually the one who needs something. Approval, control, outcome. When you delay, you flip the pressure back onto them. They wonder, they wait, they adjust. You have a choice. This doesn't mean you never act quickly. It means you don't act emotionally. Speed without emotion is fine. Speed with emotion is dangerous. It's not about slowness, it's about timing. Say it clearly. It's not about slowness, it's about timing. High performers know this. They don't rush decisions that affect reputation, relationships, or leverage. They take time, and the world often rewards that patience. Pause now, decide later. You'll notice a shift when you practice this. People stop rushing you. They stop expecting immediate access. They respect your pace. Because pace communicates value. If you're always available, always responding, always reacting, you signal that your time is cheap. Delayed response raises your perceived value. You don't need their permission to value your time. You don't need their permission to protect your attention. You don't need their permission to slow the exchange. This chapter locks in an important truth. Stillness is not static. It's strategic. You've learned to see provocation. You've learned to regulate emotion. Now you've learned to use time as a weapon. Pause now, decide later. Master this, and you'll stop being dragged into other people's urgency. Next, we move into the most misunderstood arena of all. What happens when conflict is inevitable? You've learned how to delay.
The calm one controls the room. Most people misunderstand conflict. They think it's about winning arguments, proving points, being right. That mindset keeps them trapped. Because arguments are loud, but position is silent. You can win an argument and lose respect. You can prove your point and damage your authority. You can be right and still lose power. You have a choice. That's the key. In conflict, you're not fighting for truth. You're fighting for position. And position is controlled by calm. The calm one controls the room. Aggression feeds on reaction. It grows louder when it senses emotional movement. It escalates when it smells fear, anger, or insecurity. Logic doesn't stop aggression. Presence does. Calm presence disarms aggression faster than logic ever could. That's not theory, that's human behavior. Think about every heated argument you've witnessed. Who escalated it? The loud one, the emotional one, the reactive one. And who looked powerful afterward? Not them. The calm one. You have a choice. You can meet force with force, or you can meet force with stillness. One creates chaos, the other creates dominance. That's the key. Stillness in conflict is not silence alone, it's composure under pressure. Relaxed posture, steady breath, controlled tone. No rush, no flinch. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their permission to lower your voice. You don't need their permission to pause before responding. Conflict tries to speed you up. Stillness slows it down. And whoever controls the pace controls the outcome. The calm one controls the room. Most people argue to relieve emotional discomfort. They want release. They want validation. They want to feel heard. But leaders don't argue to feel better. They engage to shape outcomes. It's not about expression. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about expression. It's about discipline. Here's what happens when you stay calm in conflict. First, the other person feels exposed. Their intensity has nothing to bounce off. Their volume feels excessive. Their behavior looks unreasonable. Second, the room recalibrates. Observers shift toward the calm presence. Authority gravitates there. Third, options appear. De-escalation, redirection, decisive closure. You have a choice. But only if you don't get pulled into the emotional current. Most people think staying calm means losing ground. They're wrong. Staying calm is how you take ground. Aggressive people expect resistance. They are trained for pushback.
They are not trained for calm. Calm confuses them. It destabilizes them. It forces them to adjust. That's the advantage. The calm one controls the room. Here's where most people fail. They mistake calm for compliance. Calm does not mean agreeing. Calm does not mean backing down. Calm does not mean being passive. Calm means you choose your response instead of surrendering it. You have a choice. In conflict, you do 3 things. First, slow your body. Breathe low and slow. Relax your shoulders. Plant your feet. Calm the body. Command the mind. That's the key. Second, lower your vocal speed. Not volume, speed. Fast speech signals emotional loss of control. Slow speech signals authority. Let your words land. Third, say less than necessary, not more. Most people talk themselves into weaker positions during conflict. They over-explain, they justify, they argue details that don't matter. Stillness keeps you strategic. It's not about winning points, it's about holding position. Say it again. It's not about winning points, it's about holding position. Conflict is a test, not of intelligence, not of logic, of emotional discipline. The person who can remain calm while challenged sends a clear signal, I am not threatened. And unthreatened people are powerful. You don't need their permission to remain composed. You don't need their permission to pause mid-conversation. You don't need their permission to disengage if necessary. Here's another hard truth. Some conflicts are traps designed to pull you into emotional exchange, designed to drain you. Winning those conflicts means not playing. That's also power. You have a choice. Engage strategically or disengage deliberately. Both require calm. The calm one controls the room. When you practice this consistently, something shifts. People approach you differently. They argue less emotionally. They become more careful because they know escalation won't work. And once escalation stops working, respect increases. This is how authority is built quietly, not through dominance displays, not through aggression, through composure. It's not about being intimidating, it's about being unmovable. Say it clearly. It's not about being intimidating, it's about being unmovable. Stillness in conflict protects your long-term position. Arguments are temporary, reputation is not. You can win today and lose tomorrow if you lose composure. But if you hold composure, even losses look controlled. And control is remembered. The calm one controls the room. This chapter locks in a critical principle. You don't need to win every argument. You need to win position. You don't need to overpower others. You need to outlast their emotion. And that requires discipline. You've learned to slow reactions. You've learned to delay. You've learned to stay calm under pressure. Now comes a deeper level. Knowing when to speak and when silence gives you more power than words ever could. You've mastered stillness in conflict. Now, let's refine your voice.
Speak only when it strengthens your position. Most people speak to relieve tension, to be understood, to clear the air, and in doing so, they weaken themselves. Words are not neutral. They either build leverage or destroy it. You have a choice. That's the key. You can speak because you feel the urge, or you can speak because it serves your position. Not every truth needs immediate expression. Not every thought needs a voice. Not every emotion deserves airtime. High-status individuals understand this. They are economical with words. They don't waste language. Because every word reveals something: intentions, limits, insecurities. Silence preserves leverage. Speak only when it strengthens your position. Most people think honesty means immediacy. It doesn't.
Honesty without timing is recklessness. Timing is power. It's not about truth, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about truth, it's about discipline. Think about how often you've talked yourself into a weaker position. You explained too much. You shared too soon. You corrected when silence would have been stronger. That wasn't honesty. That was impulse. You have a choice. The moment you feel the urge to speak, pause and ask, does this strengthen my position or weaken it? If it weakens it, you stay silent. That's the key. Silence is not deception, it's discretion. High performers don't broadcast strategy, they execute it. They don't narrate their thinking, they let outcomes speak. You don't need their permission to be reserved. You don't need their permission to withhold. You don't need their permission to stay silent. That urge to explain yourself, it comes from insecurity, from the fear of being misunderstood, from the need to control perception. But perception is controlled through consistency, not chatter. It's not about being liked, it's about being respected. Say it again. It's not about being liked, it's about being respected. Strategic silence does three things. First, it maintains mystery, and mystery creates gravity. Second, it prevents self-sabotage. You don't give away leverage you didn't need to. Third, it forces others to reveal more. People talk when you don't. Silence preserves leverage. Most people leak power through unnecessary honesty. They share doubts, they reveal fears, they confess uncertainty. All human, all expensive. You don't need to lie, you just need to stop oversharing. That's the key. Here's how you train this discipline. First, reduce verbal volume by default. Say less than you think is necessary, then cut it in half. Second, delay emotional disclosures. Feel first, process privately, speak later if needed. Third, never explain strength. Strength that requires explanation is already weakening. Let actions clarify what words would cheapen. Speak only when it strengthens your position. Here's a hard truth. Silence often says what words can't. Confidence, certainty, control. When you don't rush to speak, others assume you have options, and people respect options. You have a choice. Speak impulsively and feel relief, or stay silent and gain leverage. That relief from talking is temporary. The cost of weak positioning is not. Silence is not hiding, it's selecting. Selecting moments, selecting words, selecting impact. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. You'll notice something when you practice this. Conversations slow down. People listen more closely when you speak. Your words carry weight because they're rare. Scarcity increases value, and silence creates scarcity. You don't need their permission to speak less. You don't need their permission to observe more. You don't need their permission to wait. This chapter sharpens your edge. You've learned to regulate emotion. You've learned to handle conflict. Now you're learning to control information, and information is power. The wrong words at the wrong time cost position. The right silence at the right time builds it. Speak only when it strengthens your position. Master this and you'll stop undermining yourself with unnecessary speech. Now comes one of the most dangerous internal enemies of stillness, the ego. You've learned when to speak. Now you must learn when to let misunderstanding exist.
You don't owe clarity to everyone. Ego hates stillness. It craves reaction. It demands explanation. It insists on defense.
Because ego is afraid of being misunderstood. And that fear costs you power. You have a choice. That's the key. You can protect your ego, or you can protect your position. Most people choose ego. They correct, they clarify, they rush to set the record straight. And every time they do, they leak authority. Ego wants to be seen as right. Power wants to remain effective. It's not about being right, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about being right, it's about discipline. Power requires letting misunderstandings exist temporarily. That word matters. Temporarily. This is where people get stuck. They think silence means surrender. They think letting something stand means agreeing. It doesn't. It means you're choosing timing over impulse. You don't need their permission to let people misunderstand you. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. You don't need their permission to hold your ground internally. Ego reacts immediately. Power waits. You don't owe clarity to everyone. Think about how often you've explained yourself to the wrong audience. People who weren't listening, people who didn't care, people who wanted reaction, not truth. That explanation didn't fix anything. It fed them. Ego feeds on approval. Discipline feeds on results. That's the key. Ego says, they think something wrong about me. Discipline says, let them. That sentence alone is freedom. Let them. Let them misunderstand, for now. Let them assume. Let them project. Because reality will correct what words cannot. High-status individuals understand this deeply. They don't chase narratives, they build outcomes. They don't explain themselves to noise, they let consistency speak. You have a choice. Correct the story now, or let time do the work for you. Time is patient. Ego is not. Ego wants immediate relief. Discipline tolerates discomfort. It's not about pride, it's about restraint. Say it again. It's not about pride, it's about restraint. Here's what ego-driven behavior looks like. Over-explaining, defensive tone, unnecessary justification, public correction. Every one of these lowers your position. Why? Because it signals insecurity. Secure people don't rush to clarify. They trust their trajectory. You don't need their permission to trust yours. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. You don't need their permission to hold your ground internally. You don't owe clarity to everyone. Here's a hard truth. Misunderstandings are inevitable when you operate at a higher level. Not everyone will understand your silence, your delay, your restraint, and that's fine. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be effective. Effectiveness beats explanation. That's the key. Ego wants to be liked. Discipline wants to be respected. Respect is quieter, slower, deeper, and it lasts. You have a choice. Defend your ego today or build authority over time. Authority requires patience. Here's how you train this discipline. First, stop correcting minor misinterpretations. If it doesn't affect outcome, let it go. Second, delay major clarifications. Not forever, but until emotion dies down. Third, let behavior do the talking. Consistency over commentary. Silence backed by action is powerful. You don't need their permission to be misunderstood. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need their permission to let silence work. Ego will fight this. It will scream. It will tell you you're losing. You're not. You're consolidating power. You don't owe clarity to everyone. Say it again. You don't owe clarity to everyone. When you internalize this, something shifts. You stop reacting to every comment. You stop defending every decision. You stop exhausting yourself trying to control perception. And suddenly, you're lighter, calmer, stronger, because you're no longer chained to other people's opinions. That's freedom. And freedom is power. This chapter strips away one of the biggest drains on stillness: ego. You've learned to delay. You've learned to stay silent. Now you've learned to let misunderstanding exist. The next test is external and brutal. What happens when you're insulted directly? You've mastered ego restraint. Now it's time to face disrespect without flinching.
Unmoved is undefeated. Insults are tests, not of strength, not of intelligence, of emotional authority. An insult is a hook, thrown to see if you'll bite, to see if they can move you. You have a choice. That's the key. You can react and prove they reached you, or you can stay still and win instantly. The unbothered individual wins without response. Most people fail this test, not because the insult is powerful, but because their ego is fragile. They feel attacked. They feel disrespected. They feel the urge to respond. And the moment they do, they've already lost. Because the goal of an insult is not truth, it's movement. They want to see you flinch. They want to see you explain. They want to see you snap. Unmoved is undefeated. You don't need their permission to ignore an insult. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need their permission to refuse the test. That's the first discipline. Insults only work when they land emotionally. If they don't land, they collapse. Think about it. If someone insults a calm person and gets nothing back, no anger, no defense, no explanation, the insult dies in the air, and the one who threw it looks small. That's the key. Insults reveal more about the speaker than the target. They expose insecurity, need for dominance, need for reaction. High-status individuals know this. They don't take insults personally. They take them as data. Why are they trying to provoke me right now? That question shifts power back to you. You have a choice. React emotionally and feed the insult, or stay still and starve it. Unmoved is undefeated. Here's where most people get confused. They think not responding means letting disrespect stand. It doesn't. It means you're choosing the battleground. You're saying, I don't fight on your terms. That's power. It's not about pride, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about pride, it's about discipline. There are moments when a response is necessary, but those moments are rare and strategic. Most insults don't deserve oxygen. They deserve silence. Silence communicates one thing clearly. You don't matter enough to move me. That message cuts deeper than any comeback. You don't need their permission to be unbothered. Insults feel strong in the moment because they target identity. They poke at ego. They challenge status. But identity that collapses under words was never solid. Stillness proves solidity. Unmoved is undefeated. Here's how you train stillness under insult. First, control your face. No smirk, no scowl. Neutral. Your face is the first giveaway of a reaction. Second, control your breath. Slow exhale, relaxed jaw. Calm the body, command the mind. That's the key. Third, say nothing, or say very little. A neutral acknowledgement at most. No reaction is often the strongest response. Most people sabotage themselves by trying to sound clever, by firing back, by proving superiority. That's ego. Discipline stays quiet. You have a choice. Let insults pull you into emotional exchange, or let them bounce off your composure. Unmoved is undefeated. Here's a hard truth. If someone can insult you and control your behavior, they have power over you. If they can't, they're powerless. Stillness breaks the chain. And once people realize insults don't work on you,
They stop trying, because tests without payoff end quickly. You don't need their permission to end the game. Another truth most people miss. Responding to insults lowers you to the level of the insult. Silence keeps you above it. High ground is quiet. That's the key. Insults thrive in chaos. They die in calm. When you remain unbothered, the room notices. Observers register who's composed, who's reactive, who's in control. And control is remembered. Unmoved is undefeated. This chapter completes another layer of mastery. You've learned to handle provocation. You've learned to manage ego. You've learned to absorb insult without reaction. Now comes a quieter test, one that traps even disciplined people. The urge to correct others. You've mastered insult. Now it's time to master restraint in explanation.
Let reality respond for you. Most people correct others compulsively. They interrupt, they clarify, they point out errors. Not because it's necessary, but because their ego is uncomfortable with being misunderstood. Correction feels productive. It feels intelligent. It feels superior. But most of the time, it weakens you. You have a choice. That's the key. You can correct people, or you can let reality do the correcting. Correcting others feeds insecurity, not strength. Strong people don't rush to fix narratives. They let outcomes speak. It's not about accuracy. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about accuracy. It's about discipline. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The urge to correct is rarely about truth. It's about ego relief. I need them to know I'm right. I can't let that stand. That makes me look bad. That voice is insecurity. And insecurity is loud. Power is quiet. You don't need their permission to let people be wrong. You don't need their permission to stay silent. You don't need their permission to allow misunderstandings to exist. That's the key. Correcting people publicly does 3 damaging things. First, it lowers your status. It signals that you need validation. Second, it creates resistance. People don't like being corrected, even when you're right. Third, it locks you into unnecessary conflict. You trade long-term position for short-term satisfaction, and satisfaction fades fast. Let reality respond for you. High-status individuals rarely correct verbally. They correct through results. They don't argue facts. They demonstrate outcomes, because results are undeniable. Words can be debated. Reality cannot. You have a choice. Correct now and feel relief, or stay disciplined and gain leverage. That relief from correcting is temporary. The cost to your authority is not. Most people correct to protect image. Powerful people protect trajectory. It's not about looking smart. It's about being effective. Say it again. It's not about looking smart. It's about being effective. Think about how often you've corrected someone who wasn't listening. They didn't change. They didn't learn. They just defended. So what was gained? Nothing. Correction without influence is noise, and noise reduces authority. Let reality respond for you. This doesn't mean you never correct anyone. It means you correct selectively, privately, calmly, only when it actually changes outcomes, not to soothe ego. That distinction matters. You don't need their permission to let things play out. You don't need their permission to trust time. You don't need their permission to allow misunderstandings to exist. That's the key. If someone misunderstands you, but reality will prove you right, silence is the strongest move. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them commit to their position. Reality will expose the gap.
That's the key. Most people talk themselves out of leverage by correcting too early. They reveal strategy, they reveal intent, they reveal insecurity. Silence preserves all three. Let reality respond for you. Here's how you train this discipline. First, notice the urge to correct. The moment it appears, pause. Ask yourself, does correcting this strengthen my position? If the answer is no, you stay silent. Second, differentiate error from consequence. If the mistake has no real consequence, ignore it. Not every wrong statement needs a response. Third, redirect to action. Instead of arguing, move forward. Progress ends debate. Results silence critics faster than explanations ever could. You have a choice. Explain yourself repeatedly or let consistency speak. Consistency is slow, but it's decisive. Correction is fast, but it's fragile. It's not about impatience, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about impatience, it's about discipline. Here's a hard truth. People rarely remember who argued best. They remember who delivered. They remember outcomes. They remember composure. They remember presence. They don't remember your corrections. Let that sink in. Let reality respond for you. This discipline also protects your energy. Correcting people is exhausting because there's always someone wrong. Powerful people conserve energy for what matters. They don't spend it fixing others' opinions. They invest it in building undeniable results. You don't need their permission to conserve energy. You don't need their permission to disengage. You don't need their permission to stop explaining. When you stop correcting people, something shifts. You speak less, but when you do speak, people listen. Because your words aren't reactive, they're intentional. Scarcity increases value, and silence creates scarcity. Let reality respond for you. This chapter removes another subtle drain on stillness. You've stopped reacting, you've stopped defending, now you stop correcting, and that creates a quiet confidence that can't be shaken. Next, we move into the final refinement, the kind of confidence that doesn't announce itself. You've mastered restraint. Now, let's talk about presence.
I don't need to prove. I know. Loud confidence is everywhere. It announces itself. It demands attention. It seeks applause. And it fades. Quiet confidence does the opposite. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain. It doesn't perform. It compounds. You have a choice. That's the key. You can chase validation, or you can stand on certainty. Loud confidence is fragile. It needs agreement to survive. It needs reaction to feel real. Quiet confidence doesn't. It's not about volume. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about volume. It's about discipline. Stillness communicates certainty without explanation. When someone is truly confident, you feel it, not because they told you, but because they didn't need to. They're relaxed, grounded, unhurried. They don't rush to speak. They don't overstate. They don't compete for attention. They know who they are. I don't need to prove. I know. Most people mistake loudness for confidence. It's not. Loudness is often compensation for doubt, for insecurity, for fear of being overlooked. Quiet confidence comes from internal alignment, from self-trust, from repetition of discipline. You don't need their permission to be confident quietly. You don't need their permission to say less. You don't need their permission to stop performing. That's the key. Quiet confidence shows up in behavior.
You arrive calm. You listen more than you talk. You choose your words carefully. And when you speak, people listen, because your words aren't cheap. Scarcity creates value, and silence creates scarcity. I don't need to prove. I know. Loud confidence tries to convince. Quiet confidence assumes. Assumption is powerful. When you assume your value, others follow, not because you demanded it, but because certainty is contagious. You have a choice. Over-explain and seek agreement, or stay still and let certainty speak. Here's the difference most people miss. Loud confidence is about image. Quiet confidence is about identity. Image is maintained through effort. Identity is sustained through discipline. It's not about impressing. It's about being anchored. Say it again. It's not about impressing. It's about being anchored. Quiet confidence also protects you. It keeps you out of unnecessary arguments, out of ego traps, out of emotional exchanges, because you don't need to prove anything. You already know. That knowing is calm, it's steady, it's unmoved. I don't need to prove. I know. Here's how you build quiet confidence. First, stop announcing intentions. Let actions reveal direction. Second, reduce verbal justification. If something needs heavy explanation, it's not solid yet. Third, move at your pace. Rushing signals doubt. Stillness signals certainty. You don't need their permission to move slowly. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to stay composed. Quiet confidence also changes how people treat you. They test you less. They interrupt you less. They project less onto you, because you don't invite it. Your stillness sets boundaries without words. That's the advantage. Loud confidence tries to dominate space. Quiet confidence occupies it. And presence beats performance every time. You have a choice. Be loud and temporary, or be quiet and lasting. That's the key. Quiet confidence compounds over time. People remember how you made them feel. They remember your calm under pressure. They remember your restraint. They don't remember your speeches. Stillness communicates certainty without explanation. When you stop proving, something powerful happens. You stop chasing approval. You stop adjusting to reactions. You stop leaking energy. And that energy consolidates into presence. Presence is authority. Authority is calm. I don't need to prove. I know. This chapter marks a turning point. You've stripped away reaction. You've stripped away ego. You've stripped away noise. What remains is quiet certainty. Now comes the final discipline, decision-making. Because stillness is not just how you respond, it's how you choose. You've built the foundation. Now it's time to act from it.
Still first. Decide second. Every major consequence in your life can be traced back to a decision. Not a thought, not an intention, a decision. And most bad decisions aren't made because of bad logic. They're made because of emotional noise, pressure, fear, anger, urgency. Rash choices feel decisive, they feel bold, and they are rarely reversible. You have a choice. That's the key. You can decide from emotion, or you can decide from stillness. The difference determines everything. The most important decisions require emotional stillness first, not motivation, not confidence, stillness. Because clarity cannot exist in chaos.
Still first, decide second. Most people decide while activated, heart racing, mind spinning, body tense. In that state, you are not choosing, you are reacting with authority. That's dangerous. Authority without clarity destroys faster than hesitation ever could. You don't need their permission to pause before deciding. You don't need their permission to wait. You don't need their permission to protect your future. That belief that you must decide now is pressure, not reality. It's not about decisiveness, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about decisiveness, it's about discipline. Think about the biggest mistakes you've made: career, relationships, money. Were they slow decisions? No. They were fast, emotionally charged, driven by fear or excitement. Rash choices are rarely reversible. That's the cost of speed without stillness. High-level individuals don't rush decisions that carry weight, they slow them down. They don't decide in the heat, they decide after the heat passes. Because emotions lie about urgency, that's the key. Urgency is often artificial, manufactured, emotional. Stillness exposes what actually matters. Still first, decide second. Here's a principle you must internalize. If a decision feels urgent and emotional, it's probably the wrong time to decide. Pause. That pause is not weakness, it's protection. You have a choice. Decide now and feel relief, or decide later and gain clarity. Relief fades, consequences remain. Most people chase relief. Disciplined people choose clarity. It's not about courage, it's about control. Say it again. It's not about courage, it's about control. Stillness before decision does three critical things. First, it drains emotion. Fear loses volume, anger loses edge, excitement loses distortion. Second, it reveals second-order consequences. Not just what do I want now, but what does this cost later? Third, it reconnects you to values, not ego, not pressure, values. You have a choice. Most people let emotion decide for them. Powerful people let emotion pass, then decide. Still first, decide second. Here's where people struggle. They confuse stillness with procrastination. They are not the same. Procrastination avoids responsibility. Stillness prepares for responsibility. One delays out of fear, the other delays out of discipline. That distinction matters. You don't need their permission to take time. You don't need their permission to think. You don't need their permission to say, "I'll decide later." Those words protect your future. Here's how you train decision stillness. First, no major decisions while emotionally elevated. Angry? Wait. Excited? Wait. Afraid? Wait. Emotion is a weather pattern. Let it pass. Second, physically regulate before deciding. Slow breath, relax posture, ground yourself. Calm the body, command the mind. That's the key. Third, ask one disciplined question. Will I respect this decision 6 months from now? If you're unsure, you're not ready. Wait. Still first, decide second. This discipline alone will change your life. You will stop saying yes to the wrong things. You will stop reacting into commitments. You will stop trading long-term stability for short-term comfort. Because stillness gives you foresight. Foresight is power. You have a choice. Let emotion drive or let discipline lead.
Here's another hard truth. Some opportunities are tests. They feel urgent. They pressure you to move fast, not because they're rare, but because they benefit someone else more than you. Stillness reveals that. When you slow down, weak offers collapse, manipulative pressure dissolves. Only real opportunities remain. That's the key. High-status individuals are not indecisive. They are deliberate. They don't confuse speed with strength. They understand that a fast wrong decision is worse than a slow right one. Rash choices are rarely reversible. Read that again. Rash choices are rarely reversible. That sentence alone can save you years. Still first, decide second. This discipline applies everywhere. Career moves, business deals, relationships, confrontations. Any decision that alters trajectory deserves stillness first. If someone pressures you to decide now, pause. If your emotions spike, pause. If clarity feels absent, pause. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to choose wisely. You don't need their permission to protect your future self. That future version of you is watching, and they will either thank you or live with the consequences. Stillness is a form of respect. Respect for yourself, for your time, for your direction. This chapter brings everything together. You've learned to control reaction. You've learned to manage emotion. You've learned to stay silent, delay, and restrain ego. Now you apply all of it at the point that matters most: decision. Still first, decide second. There is only one chapter left, not about technique, not about control, about identity. Because when stillness becomes who you are, nothing can move you without your consent. You've mastered the moment of decision. Now it's time to become untouchable.
Nothing moves me unless I allow it. This is where everything comes together. Not as a technique, not as a trick, as an identity. Becoming untouchable does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean becoming distant. It does not mean shutting down emotion. It means mastering it. Emotional discipline makes you difficult to manipulate, and people can only manipulate what they can move. You have a choice. That's the key. You can live as a reaction machine, or you can live as a grounded presence. Most people are moved by everything: words, opinions, pressure, urgency. They live in a constant state of adjustment, adjusting tone, adjusting posture, adjusting decisions. And because they are always adjusting, they are never anchored. Untouchable people are anchored. Nothing moves me unless I allow it. This is the final level. Stillness no longer feels forced, it feels natural, because you are no longer fighting impulses, you have trained past them. Pressure doesn't break you, it feeds you. Stillness turns pressure into fuel. That's the difference. Pressure exposes weakness in the undisciplined. Pressure reveals strength in the trained. You have a choice. Pressure will either rush you or sharpen you. The difference is emotional discipline. People will still provoke you, still test you, still try to rush you, but now it doesn't land, because nothing sticks to someone who doesn't react. Manipulation requires access. Access to emotion, access to urgency, access to ego. You've closed those doors. You don't need their permission to be unmoved. You don't need their permission to stay grounded. You don't need their permission to protect your inner state. That's the key. Being untouchable doesn't mean nothing affects you. It means nothing controls you. There's a difference. You feel emotion, you acknowledge it, then you decide. Emotion informs, discipline governs. Say it clearly. It's not about suppression, it's about discipline. Nothing moves me unless I allow it. At this level, you stop fighting the world.
You stop reacting to noise. You stop trying to control others, because you've learned the only real control is internal, and internal control is absolute. Think about how rare this is. Most people can't sit in discomfort. They rush to escape it. They rush to relieve it. You don't. You stay. And staying changes everything. Pressure that would break others becomes training for you. Insults lose their bite. Provocation loses its pull. Urgency loses its authority. Because you don't answer to emotion anymore. You answer to choice. You have a choice. Always. This is what makes you untouchable. Not dominance, not aggression, not intimidation. Stillness. Calm, deliberate, unshakable stillness. Stillness turns pressure into fuel. Here's what changes when this becomes your default. People stop rushing you. They stop provoking you. They stop testing you. Not because they're kinder, but because it doesn't work. You are no longer reactive material. You don't light up when poked. You don't spill when shaken. Nothing moves me unless I allow it. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. You act when it matters. You speak when it strengthens your position. You move when the moment is right. And when you move, it's decisive. Because all unnecessary movement has been removed. It's not about control over others. It's about discipline over self. Say it again. It's not about control over others. It's about discipline over self. This is the final transformation. You are no longer dragged by emotion, no longer hijacked by urgency, no longer ruled by ego. You are self-governed. And self-governed people are rare. They are calm in chaos, measured under pressure, clear when others panic. That clarity is magnetic. Not loud, not performative, quiet, and undeniable. Nothing moves me unless I allow it. Let this become your standard. Not something you try to remember, something you live from. When insult comes, still. When pressure rises, still. When urgency knocks, still. Still first, always. Then decide. Stillness is no longer something you do, it's who you are. And when stillness becomes identity, you become untouchable. This is the discipline. This is the edge. This is how power is held, not loudly, not desperately, but calmly.
Power is not loud. Power does not rush. Power does not explain itself under pressure. Power stays still when insulted, when provoked, when tested. Remember this: the world reacts emotionally. Leaders do not. From this moment forward, your rule is simple. Pause longer. Speak less. Move only when it strengthens your position. Let others panic. Let others rush. Let others reveal themselves. You remain still when it matters most. And starting today, practice this discipline until your calm becomes your identity.